Good afternoon. It's Wednesday. It's November 3rd, and I apologize for being a little late to the meeting. I was going to ask you guys today to talk a little bit about the time change. In fact, the time change is going to happen this weekend, and we get an hour back from what was ridiculously taken away sometime in March at the beginning of the year, because they were supposedly saving daylight savings. Probably you can tell from my sarcasm that I simply think messing with clocks and pretending to take an hour away from a day on a weekend is going to save you anything. We know that what it does do is it shifts the time frame, and that time frame that gets shifted is one that will make it so that it's a little more daylight in the evening. But what it tends to do for all of us is it makes it darker in the morning. And when we're coming to school, especially for school kids, or if you're milking cows, for example, or if you tend to animals on a regular basis, they use a clock that goes with the sun, and that clock is natural. So for us to artificially decide, and we've only done this, it's only certain states in America, most of the states in America, the rest of the world doesn't do this stuff. But everybody has to keep track if they're internationally flying airplanes. Everybody has to keep track if they are going across the country from various states that don't abide by daylight savings. And we are unfortunately back to what we call standard time. And standard means it's the standard. Daylight savings doesn't save daylight. It just shifts what the clock says so that it makes it seem like it's more daylight later in the evening. I asked you guys to read that article about standard time from the Texas standard time article about the standard time change for 2021, and I might be able to go ahead and daylight savings times and timetables change a little bit, or at least I can go ahead and share this and talk a little bit about what I see. Now, the Farmer's Almanac, they have some things, and this is the one that I actually asked you guys to read. It was called the Times Record News. So I'm going to go ahead and share this screen. And when I'm sharing this screen with you guys, I'm going to probably read little bits and pieces of the article because I found it interesting in the way they handle it. One of my other sources that I use is actually it's a Facebook source. And in that Facebook source, what I have found is that we are, we're kind of in gear with like Alberta, Canada. They don't, there are proponents there who are trying to let us know that, hey, is it the law? Well, yeah. In 1966, it became what we called Sign in Uniform, the Time Act information. Now, why this might be a little bit of a problem is if you get legal, your lawmakers messing with this, there has to be an alternative reason for what they're doing. So, each year, twice a year, we switch the clocks either forward or backward. And that's 1 hour, which they call daylight savings time. And it's in the fall right now where we get the hour back. It's actually my favorite because on Saturday night, I get an extra hour, and it doesn't matter what I do with that hour. I just love it. I might decide to clean the closet, or I might decide to clean the carpets, or I do some extra thing, like maybe dumping the stuff out of the refrigerator and cleaning the refrigerator, and I feel so much better when I get up in the morning. Just saying. At least 19 states, though, have attempted to put an end to this practice in recent years, according to the National Conference of State Legislators. So far, only 2 states in our country do not follow it. I think Arizona is one of them. 33 states, though, filed for something called daylight savings time legislation. alone, that means 80 pieces of legislating that address it, and 22 states with 60 pieces of pending legislation. Alabama, Georgia, Minnesota, Mississippi, and Montana have passed daylight savings time legislation. And for 2021, daylight savings time will end at 2 a.m. Sunday, November 7th. That's this weekend. And all that time, we fall back around 1 a.m. or so, and you get an extra hour of sleep. Now, why do we even have daylight savings time? Well, if we go back to historical, Benjamin Franklin credited the first introducing with seasonal time back in 1784, but there were no laws made for the change at that time. And I guess what he was trying to say is possibly that would, save some type of, introducing, the idea of seasonal change. But if it does go seasonal change, wouldn't it make sense that at the equinox would make the change? So that would be mid-March and then mid-September. And at the equinoxes, where we have 12 hours each of both daylight and darkness, that's where you could change it. But it doesn't go. They've moved it a little earlier in March and a little later in the fall. The history of it, though, goes back as early as 1918, following Germany's 1916 effort to conserve fuel during World War I. They had a couple periods of time when the United States had year-round daylight savings time. That was from 1942 to 1945 during World War II. And we tried it in 1974 to 1975, and I was in high school that year. And if I remember correctly, I don't even remember it. So if I try to remember back on it, I can't remember that we even did anything. The designated dates for daylight savings time were put into federal law in 1966, and Lyndon Johnson did that. And if you remember correctly, John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and Lyndon Johnson took over following the assassination. Anyway, it runs the second Sunday in March through the first Sunday in November, except for the areas that are desired that want to remain on standard time, like, states have always traditionally done it, and that's Arizona and Hawaii. So several of the territories that we have that are part of the country, the American Samoa, Guam, Northern Marina Island, I think Puerto Rico, and even the U.S. Virgin Islands do not observe it. So if you travel to those places, they won't be on daylight savings time either. And there are states that want to do away with it. And here's the list of many of the states that have tried it. And if you notice, Pennsylvania is not one of them. Georgia has made the attempt twice. They tried it last year and this year too. And Florida was the first state to enact permanently ending daylight savings time, but it has not been enforced. So we'll see what will happen. California voters, though, too, have also authorized the end of daylight savings time. And I think a lot of these states, California in particular, because there's such, they're on the Pacific side of the country. They're already 3 hours different from most of the rest of the country. And if you take a look at what that does with commerce and also with air travel and truck travel, all of those things, even our phones and our computers, are affected, and they have considered it in how it disrupts. Now, what's interesting to me too is some of the ways in which they have said that switching back and forth affects our health, and that's an interesting thing to consider. And I think that some people are more greatly affected by it than others. I know that I like it more when I get my sleep, and I'm not as happy in the spring when I lose the hour. In fact, I try to make up for it somehow. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that window I'm going to go ahead and close that window if it'll let me, and go back to not share, stop presenting. There we go. So, long story short, Mrs. Douglas is not a fan of daylight savings time, and I'm not sure you have an opinion on it, but you're allowed to have an opinion on it, and it looks like we're still stuck with it. Okay? That's our chit chat for today.